Okay, we have a couple of pages of questions to go over today. First page 76 in your textbook. Now, this material had to do with the area of Italy before the Roman Republic. So number one, did I have you do these complete sentences? Yes? Okay. So I'll just call on you to read your sentence to me and you can tell me. Steve, do you have a question or are you volunteering?
I don't have.
You don't have this? Were you not here yesterday?
I was here yesterday, but not Monday.
Okay.
I leave yesterday. I may have just mixed with you.
Yeah, well, the assignments have been on the board, so you should be able to see them there. So go out in the hall and complete them. Okay, let's start then with John. Read the first question for us.
The Romans called the Mediterranean Sea the Mare Nostrum.
Correct. Mare Nostrum. Any question? Or RC, if you wanted to put, not RC like the letter, but OURSEA, if you wanted to put the translation. Any questions? All right, number 2, Matthew.
The city of Rome was founded in the year 753 BC.
That is correct. Next, number 3, Noah.
Romulus and Remus found Rome according to legend.
That's that. The second letter in the second name is an E, which makes it Remus rather than Romulus. Romulus and Remus. That's 1 point, even though they're 2 people, because it's just so easy. Any questions? All right, number 4. Griff.
The patricians and the plebeians were the 2 social classes.
That is correct. Any question? And number 5. Zach?
The symbol of authority in earlier Roman society was fasces.
Right. Any question? All right, so we have 6 easy points there. Now let's go over to page 79. Read number 1 for us, Mia.
In 509 BC, the Roman Republic was founded.
That is correct. Number 2, Amelia.
The Senate became the most important and most powerful body of the Republic.
That is correct. Number 3, back to John.
The tribunes had unjust acts of the veto.
Okay, your sentence is a little confused. The power the tribunes exercised over unjust acts was the veto. The veto is the answer there. Okay, Matthew, number 4.
The name of the Roman that was The name of the Roman that was
The Roman law.
Roman law that was placed in the form was the name of it was the Law of 12 Tablets.
Yeah, or law of 12 tables. Tablets or tables, I guess both of those are used. And number 5, Noah.
The tribal assembly was the plebeian assembly that gained the power to pass laws binding all the people of Rome, regardless of their social class.
That is correct. Good. And 5 points there. So, count up the number of points you have off, put it at the top of your page, and circle it. So we have 11 points altogether. And then let me have it. If you're doing this at home, just report to me your score. Okay, would someone get Stephen, please? All right, today we want to go to the section of your notes called Early Roman Republic, the establishment of the Republic. republic. Remember initially, the Etruscans had control of much of this area, this part of Italy. They all were control up here too, but the Etruscans had much of this area. Down here we see the Greeks had quite an influence. They had settled in this area. That's going to come to play a little bit later on. So the Etruscans then conquered the Latin villages that were there and established a monarchy. But the Latin city of Rome continued to increase. In 509 BC, the king was overthrown and a republic was established, with administration divided among the councils, the Senate, and the assemblies. And so yesterday we looked at this chart in your book that outlines the government as it developed over the years, and we want to briefly go over it again today. So the establishment of the republic, as I said, was the administration was divided between these three groups. Now, a republic is simply a kind of government that represents the people. A democracy, everyone votes. A republic, you have representatives, there are people that run the government, but they're responsible to the people. Monarchy, of course, is responsible to no one necessarily, except the monarch himself. So in the republic, there were consuls, and you saw the chart where the consuls came from, so I won't go over that again. The consuls were elected by citizens in the republic, each ruled for 1 year. They came out of the Senate, but elected by the citizens. What did they do? Well, first of all, they supervised the daily affairs of government. So that fulfilled the executive branch of government, or at least a part of the executive branch. I'm hoping that you know the three branches of government. Is that correct? That you know by this stage in your academic career the three branches of government? What are they? Give me one, Griff.
Forget it.
That's not one of them. The three branches of government. Come on, you've got to show up the new Democratic senator from New York here. What are the three branches of government? No one can give me any branches of government? Did you not learn this in middle school government? You had government class, did you not?
It's been a
That should have
while.
been one of the first things that you learned in government. The three branches of government. No, can you give me a branch?
Oh, judicial.
Judicial branch. What's another one? Mia.
Legislative.
Legislative branch. What's another one? Executive branch. What does the legislative branch do? I have to talk with Mr. Lamb. Tell me he needs to drill this into people more. The legislative branch makes laws. What does the executive branch do? Carries out the laws. What does the judicial branch do? Interprets the laws. If you do not know those, and apparently you don't, you ought to write those down and memorize them, because I expect you to know basics like this. You should know this by now. All right? You have three branches of government. I shouldn't have to go over it with you like I just did, because we're going to talk about the branches of government here, and I expect that you know what I'm talking about. All right, so the consuls, in supervising the daily affairs of government, are carrying out the executive function of government. The next thing they do is they command the Roman army. That's also an executive function. Who is the executive in the United States government?
President.
The President of the United States. And the President of the United States, as the executive, is also called Commander-in-Chief. He is the head of the military. The third responsibility of the consuls was that they served as supreme judges of the land. So in that sense, they were carrying out the judicial aspect of government. They were acting as judges. So the two consuls, elected by the citizens from the Senate, carried out some parts of the government that would be considered executive, and a small part that would be considered judicial. Any questions? So we see the Republic has a division among these three that kind of presents a division of power. Got the consuls, the Senate, and the assemblies. Here's what the consuls do. What about the Senate? Well, the Senate is the most important and most powerful body, and it's made up of the oldest and wisest men of Rome, and they are legislative in their function. They're the ones that make the laws. Just like we have a Senate in our United States government that has a part in making laws. We also have a House of Representatives, which has a part as well. We have two houses called bicameral. All right, so the Senate is the legislative branch. And then we have the Assembly of Centuries. That's the assembly for the common people, and that is also legislative. Now, what could they do? They didn't have as much power as the Senate. Well, they voted on legislation. Interestingly enough, it's from this branch that come declarations of war. That may be that it's because the common people that usually end up fighting the wars, and this was a concession that was made at some point from the Senate. Thirdly, they elected high-ranking government officials, but ultimately the Senate had veto power over anything that the Assembly of Centuries came up with. So the Senate is ultimately in charge. So they kind of let the Assembly of Centuries have some toys to play with, but if they didn't like how they were playing, they could take away the toys. Or at least keep them from playing. All right, any questions about these three groups and the roles they played? All right, next let's look at the struggle within the Republic. There were constant wars against enemies in Italy, and that necessitated reliance upon the plebeians, who in turn desired a greater share in the government and society. The plebeians said, hey, we are the ones that are fighting all these wars all the time, so we should have some say in what goes on in our country. The concession made was to establish the Council of Plebeians. They could pass resolutions called plebiscites, which was not binding on the patricians. So that, again, they could pass laws, but it wasn't anything that the patricians had to go along with. The council could elect 10 tribunes with veto power over unjust acts of patrician officials. So here they gain a major bit of power with the 10 tribunes can veto anything that the Senate passes. We saw that as we looked at the chart previously. The patricians also forced Roman law to writing, put it in writing. They said, we know what the law says, but let's put it in writing. If you've ever watched any of the judge shows on television, what do you hear over and over again when people have a dispute? Get it in writing, right? You should have put this in writing. But so-and-so said I didn't have to pay it back. Or so-and-so said that this was a loan. Or so-and-so said that I only had to pay this much rent a month with. Oh, is it in writing? No. Well, then you can't prove it. Get it in writing. And so that's what the patricians wanted to have happen, and that is to put Roman law in writing. And so they wrote what is called the Law of 12 Tables, or tablets. The Law of 12 Tables hung in the Roman Forum, which was the center of government. Now, interesting for us to see what some of the laws were in the Law of 12 Tables. One of them was that no person was beyond the law. So no one could say, well, the law doesn't apply to me. That's a pretty good rule, don't you think? Secondly, no judicial decision could be made after sundown. Was that because they didn't have lights? Why would they have that rule? that no judicial decisions could be made after sundown.
Oh,
Is that
Because people were tired. You couldn't think
might make a bad decision?
Yeah.
No, that's a possibility, but that's not why. Why not after sundown?
so, you said it could like know faster, like what happened.
Say that again.
So the citizens could know.
So they can know quicker after sundown?
Yeah.
How, when they're
Or not
asleep?
after sundown, like before sundown.
Oh, so in other words, if a decision or any kind of judicial proceeding occurred after sundown, not many people would know about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It needed to be something that was open to the people so they would know what's going on. The third rule that we're going to consider is that the most recent law was the one in force. The most recent law was the one in force. Explain that to me. Why would that be important? That the most recent law is the one in force. Now it's talking about two laws that maybe contradict one another. So why would the more recent one be the one in force? What if you didn't have that rule? What would happen? Yeah. So somebody gets arrested for breaking a law, and they say, well, wait a minute. The law last year was that this was okay, so you can't arrest me. Does that work? No, because the most recent law is the one that's in force. Now, I don't know if you've ever had a conflict like this in your family, but in my family, it was the opposite. Whoever gives you an answer between mother and father, whoever gives the answer first is the one you have to go by. Now, why do we have that rule in the family? Because what do you do if you don't get the answer you want from one parent?
You go to the other.
And if you know that you can play one against the other, or you can go to a second one, until or you hopefully get what you want, then that creates conflict between the parents, right? So in our house, if one of my kids came to me and asked me for something, I'd say, have you asked your mother? And if the answer was yes, then my answer was, then you have to do what she said. If the answer was no, then I would say, well, let me go ask your mother and see what she says. But whoever gave the answer first is the one you have to go with. Well, when it comes to law, because you're always passing new laws, the most recent law has to be the one in force. All right, and that's the way it is. Whenever a law is passed, if it contradicts an earlier one, it negates that earlier law. All right, another interesting law they had was that no gold could be buried with a person, except for the gold used in fillings. If they had teeth that had gold fillings, you didn't have to pull their teeth out. That was okay. But otherwise, you couldn't bury gold with a person. Why would they have that law?
It was like,
Matthew?
So like people didn't like rob the grave.
Yeah, it helped prevent grave robbing. Because if you thought there was gold in a grave, people would dig it up and try to get the gold out. But if there's a law that says no gold, then there's no point in digging them up, right? So these are some of the laws that were on the table. You can see that they're very practical laws and very necessary. All right, the plebeians gradually improved their political and social standing as time went on. And in 287, the plebeian assembly, which was called the tribal assembly, gained power to pass laws binding upon all. Remember, originally, the laws they passed weren't binding on the patricians, but now the laws they passed are followed by everyone, even when they're contrary to the resolutions of the Senate. So here's a time when the Senate is no longer in total control. The tribal assembly could pass laws that even the Senate couldn't negate. So there's becoming more and more of an equality between plebeians and patricians. And as they become more and more equal, now the distinction starts to develop between rich and poor. Now, for the most part, patricians and plebeians could be divided that way too. But by the time that this occurs, many of the patricians have become wealthy, but they're still patricians because they weren't part of certain families. But now, as they become more and more equal politically, the divisions between people becomes more those that have wealth and those that do not. All right, so as kind of review, we have around 600 BC, Etruscan kings begin to rule Rome. The Romans overthrow the Etruscan king, and by the Romans, we're talking about the Latins here, in 509 BC. And the Romans founded a republic government in which citizens elect leaders, not a direct democracy, but they elect their leaders at least. Any questions? Whoops. I want to put one more picture up here. Yeah, no more kings. Viva Republic. Long live the Republic. So, looking back over the time, we have the conquest of Italy. We have people called the Bay, the sack of Rome by the Gauls in 390, and this is looking at things that are a little in the future, I think, here. So, we'll skip back on that. Okay. Any questions? All right, your assignment for tomorrow is to read and take notes on pages 80 to 85. So I'll give you the rest of the time. You should be able to finish that up. Pages 80 to 85, read and take notes in your outline. If you finish with that, look over your notes and make sure that you are learning them as we go along so that you won't have to study so hard when we get to the ultimate test.